The salute looked perfect to everyone watching, except the one man whose opinion mattered. And he didn't just say it was wrong, he made sure every soul on that set heard exactly why. Wait, because what John Wayne did in the next 40 seconds, he'd never done before in 15 years of making movies. And the reason Ford pushed him that far would haunt both of them for the rest of their lives. The soundstage at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer was quieter than usual for a war picture. No explosions were scheduled for that Tuesday afternoon in March of 1945. Just a simple scene where two Navy officers would salute a passing admiral and then turn back to their conversation. Simple, clean, professional. The kind of thing you knocked out in 3 takes and moved on. John Wayne stood beside Robert Montgomery under the hot set lights. Both men dressed in crisp navy whites, gold braid catching the spots overhead. Montgomery adjusted his collar for the 3rd time. Wayne noticed the way his co-star's hands moved, precise and automatic, the kind of habit you don't think about anymore. After you've worn the uniform for real. Montgomery had commanded PT boats in the Pacific. Wayne had commanded nothing but imaginary troops on imaginary battlefields that existed only between the words action and cut. The set was crowded with men who'd actually been there. The script supervisor had lost a brother at Normandy. The assistant director wore a Purple Heart under his civilian shirt. The grip adjusting the key light had a steel plate in his skull from a grenade in the Ardennes. Even the kid running for coffee had spent 6 months on a destroyer in the South Pacific before his 18th birthday. And then there was John Ford. Listen to the silence on that set for a second, because what you're about to hear is the sound of a man realizing he's been carrying a lie for 4 years. The director sat in his canvas chair 20 feet from camera, the black patch over his left eye, making it impossible to tell where he was looking. But Wayne knew. Ford had been watching him all morning with that particular quality of silence that meant something was building. Ford had served, photographed D-Day, won medals for courage under fire. The eye patch wasn't an affectation. He'd lost the sight in a training accident, but served anyway. And that made all the difference. Wayne had stayed home. 6 more days of shooting. 6 more days to get through this without breaking. But first, this scene. This salute. The official reason was a 3A deferment, family classification, perfectly legal and completely justified by any bureaucratic standard you cared to name. He had 4 children by 1943. He was over 30. His studio argued he was worth more to morale on screen than he'd ever be in a trench. Republic Pictures practically begged him not to enlist. His agent called it professional suicide. His first wife used the kids as leverage every time he mentioned signing up. But none of that mattered on a set full of men who'd made a different choice. Montgomery had been checking the blocking when Ford's voice cut through the murmur of preparation. Positions for the salute. The 2 actors moved to their marks. Wayne trying to remember the technical advisor's instructions from the previous week about hand positioning and angle and timing. The technical advisor was a retired rear admiral who'd looked through Wayne the entire briefing, as if explaining basic courtesy to a child who'd never amount to much. Ford called action without the usual preamble. The stand-in admiral, played by a veteran character actor with genuine combat ribbons on his chest, walked past camera left. Wayne and Montgomery came to attention, hands rising in unison, holding for the prescribed beat, lowering with what Wayne thought was reasonable precision. He'd practiced it, studied films, watched Montgomery demonstrate it twice. Ford let them hold position for a long moment after the admiral cleared frame. Then he said, "Cut." Pause. Again. The stand-in admiral walked back to his starting position. Wayne reset, feeling something tighten in his chest, some animal awareness that he was being hunted, but couldn't see the trap yet. Montgomery caught his eye, gave the smallest shake of his head, a warning Wayne couldn't interpret. Second take. Same blocking, same timing. Wayne concentrated on keeping his elbow at the right angle, fingers together, thumb along the seam of his hand, exactly the way the Admiral had shown him. He'd done harder stunts, ridden worse horses. This was just a salute. Ford's voice came flat and cold. Cut. Reset. No explanation. No note. Just the command to do it again. Third take. Wayne felt the lights hotter now, sweat starting to gather under his collar, despite the fans running at the edge of the set. Montgomery's salute still looked effortless. Wayne's felt like he was holding a gun to his own head. Cut. The silence stretched. Ford stood up from his chair, and that's when Wayne knew it was coming. Whatever it was, the director moved 3 steps closer, still 20 feet away, but somehow filling the entire space between them. "Duke," Ford said. Loud enough that the grips stopped moving. The script girl looked up from her notes. The makeup woman froze with her powder puff, halfway to another actor's face. "Can't you manage a salute that at least looks as though you've been in the service?" The words landed like artillery in the middle of a silent field. Wayne felt his jaw lock, felt every eye on the set swing toward him, felt the weight of every man who'd actually worn the uniform pressing down on his shoulders like a physical thing. Ford wasn't asking a question. He was making a statement, public and permanent, about who Wayne was and who he wasn't, and exactly how much that mattered. Notice something about the way a film set works. When the director stops pretending the cameras aren't rolling on your dignity, everyone becomes a witness. Everyone remembers. The story gets told at wrap parties, and in studio commissaries, and in letters home to wives who'll tell their friends. This moment would outlive the movie itself. Wayne opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Montgomery, who'd gone very still, the muscle in his jaw working, but his face carefully neutral. Montgomery knew what it cost to salute. He'd saluted men who didn't come back. He'd earned the right to that gesture in ways Wayne never would. But Montgomery hadn't said anything. Ford had. Wayne took 2 steps toward the director. "I did the best I could with what I know." Ford's good eye glittered. "Well, your best looks like a high school boy playing soldier on his daddy's porch. Remember what I said about Ford wanting to break Wayne? Watch what happens when Wayne realizes breaking is the only option Ford left him." Somewhere behind the lights, someone coughed to cover what might have been a laugh, or might have been shock. Wayne couldn't tell which was worse. He'd taken insults before. Ford had a reputation for cruelty, a need to break his actors down before building them up. Wayne had endured it on Stagecoach, on Fort Apache, learned to eat it, smile, and ask for another take. But this was different. This wasn't about acting. This was about the war, about the men who'd gone and the man who'd stayed, about the choice Wayne had made every morning for 4 years when he looked at himself in the mirror and knew other men his age were dying while he collected a paycheck. Ford knew exactly what he was doing. He'd been building to this since principal photography started, making little comments about civilians and Hollywood courage, testing to see how far he could push before Wayne's pride broke through the professional smile. Now he had his answer. Wayne felt his hands curl into fists at his sides, felt the heat in his face that had nothing to do with the set lights, felt something snap in his chest that he'd been holding together with willpower and guilt and the desperate hope that if he just worked hard enough, was good enough in the role, maybe it would balance the scales somehow. "I'll do it again," Wayne said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. "Show me what you want." Ford shook his head. "I want you to have earned the right to wear that uniform. But we don't always get what we want, do we, Duke?" The set had gone from silent to suffocating. Wayne could hear his own breathing, could hear the distant sound of another production on a neighboring stage, laughing at something funny, living in a world where this wasn't happening. Montgomery stepped forward. "Jack, maybe we could. Maybe you could mind your own business, Lieutenant Commander." Ford cut him off, emphasizing the rank Montgomery had actually held. "I'm directing Duke here, not you." Wayne looked at Montgomery, looked at the crew, looked at Ford's face, half shadowed by the patch, the other half showing something Wayne couldn't quite name, but recognized from his own bathroom mirror at 3 in the morning, when the whiskey didn't help, and the house was quiet, and the question he couldn't answer was whether he was a coward or just a man who'd made a choice. He turned and walked toward the stage door. "Where the hell are you going?" Ford's voice followed him. "We're not wrapped." Wayne kept walking. Past the camera, past the crew, past Montgomery, who reached out but didn't quite touch his arm, past the craft services table, where an assistant prop master was pretending very hard not to watch a movie star do something no one had ever seen him do before. Walk off a set, 15 years of pictures, hundreds of scenes, dozens of directors, some kind, some cruel, some drunk, some brilliant. He'd endured a broken shoulder on Reap the Wild Wind and finished the take. He'd done 27 takes of a single line for Howard Hawks without complaint. He'd ridden horses that tried to kill him and worn costumes that bruised his ribs and stood in Nevada heat for 16 hours to get the light Ford wanted. But he'd never walked off. The door clanged shut behind him, and suddenly he was in the alley between sound stages, the California sun brutal after the controlled lighting inside, his eyes watering from the sudden brightness, or something else he wasn't ready to name. Look at Wayne standing in that alley, because the next decision he makes will define the rest of his career, and it's not the one you think. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. 3 matches. The first 2 blew out. This was what Ford wanted, to break him down, to punish him for every day he'd spent safe while men died. Ford had every right. Montgomery had every right. The grip with the steel plate in his skull had every right. But knowing that didn't make it hurt less. Wayne leaned against the brick wall and smoked and tried to decide if walking back through that door would be braver than staying out here. The cigarette burned down to his fingers. He lit another from the end of the first. Inside, they'd be talking. Montgomery would try to smooth it over. Ford would be pacing, furious or satisfied, or both. The crew would be placing bets on whether Wayne came back or if they'd have to shut down production. The door opened. Montgomery stepped out, still in his navy whites, and Wayne noticed for the first time how naturally the man wore them, how little they looked like a costume. "He's an asshole," Montgomery said. No preamble. Wayne laughed, once, sharp and humorless. "He's right. He's right. And he's an asshole." 2 things can be true. Montgomery pulled out his own cigarettes. They smoked in silence for a moment, then quieter. "You know he rode me hard too, first week. Made me do that PT boat transfer scene 20 times. Kept telling me I moved like an actor, not a sailor." "Did you?" "Yeah. I'd forgotten how to be Lieutenant Commander Montgomery. Been playing pretend so long I'd lost the muscle memory." Montgomery studied the ash on his cigarette. "Difference is I could go back to it. Remember it. You never had it to begin with, and he's punishing you for that. I could have enlisted. Could have. Didn't. Now you have to live with it." Montgomery turned to look at him directly. "But you don't have to let him turn you into his punching bag for the next 6 days of shooting." Wayne hadn't realized they were that close to wrap. 6 more days of this. 6 more days of Ford finding new ways to remind him that he was the fraud in a room full of real men. "What do I do?" Montgomery shrugged. "Go back in. Do the scene. Let him have his anger. It's not really about the salute. It's about him needing to know you understand what it cost for men like me to earn one, and what it would have cost you to be worthy of giving one. And if I can't do it right, then you can't. But you show up and you try. That's the only thing that matters now. Not the salute. The showing up. Wait. Because most men would have called their agent and walked." Wayne did something harder. Wayne dropped the cigarette and ground it under his heel. Wondered if this was what moral courage felt like. Smaller and quieter than he'd imagined. Just the decision to walk back through a door and let someone hurt you because maybe you'd earned the hurting. Montgomery opened the stage door. The light from inside spilled across the alley. He'll never apologize, you know. Ford doesn't apologize. But if you come back and finish this, he'll respect you. And 30 years from now, when some kid asks you about the war, you can tell him the truth, that you didn't serve, and you carry that, and you did the work anyway. Stop for a second and picture what's about to happen, because walking back through that door isn't courage. It's something else entirely. The kind of strength that only shows up when there's no glory in it. Wayne stepped toward the door, stopped. He'll do it again. Find another way to gut me. Probably. He's a bastard with a point to prove, and a war he thinks he won while you sat it out. Montgomery's voice was gentle but firm. But you finish this picture anyway, because that's the job. They walked back onto the set together. The crew went quiet. Ford stood by his chair, arms crossed, face unreadable. The cameras were still in position. The lights still hot. The Admiral's stand-in had waited. Wayne moved to his mark beside Montgomery without a word. Ford studied him for a long moment. Then he sat down, waved a hand at the cameraman. Let's go again. Positions. One more day after this. 24 hours. Wayne could survive anything for 24 hours. Notice how Wayne's hand moves this time. It's not perfect. It's honest. Wayne brought his hand up to salute, and this time, he didn't try to make it perfect. He made it honest. Made it the salute of a man who knew he hadn't earned the uniform he was wearing, but was going to honor the men who had by doing the best he could with what he had. The Admiral walked past. Wayne held the salute, lowered his hand. Ford let the silence hang for 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Cut. Print it. Moving on. No praise. No acknowledgement. Just the scene captured and the production rolling forward, because that's what happened on a Ford set. You did the work, you took the beating, and you showed up the next day to do it again. Wayne and Ford made 12 more films together after they were expendable. They never talked about that afternoon in March. Montgomery went on to direct his own pictures, won awards, died respected. Ford kept his eye patch, and his cruelty, and his 4 Oscars. Remember I told you, Ford never apologized? Listen to what he did instead. He kept casting Wayne, kept pushing him, kept making him better by making him face the one thing Wayne could never change. And Wayne carried it. The walk-off. The public shaming. Wayne had chosen door number 3, walk away and come back, which was maybe the only answer that proved he understood what it meant to finish the mission, even when the cost was your pride. When people asked him later about working with Ford, Wayne always said the same thing. Pappy was tough, but he made me better. He never mentioned the salute, never told the story of the only time he walked off a set. Some things you carry quietly, the way veterans carry their medals in drawers instead of on their chests. But everyone who was there remembered. The crew, Montgomery, the Admiral's stand-in. They remembered the day John Wayne learned that some roles you can't just act your way through, some uniforms you have to earn before you put them on, and some silences speak louder than all the dialogue in the script. Ford died in 1973. Wayne spoke at the funeral, called him his best friend, his mentor, the man who made him a star. He meant every word. The complicated truth is that you can love someone who hurt you, respect someone who humiliated you. The war ended 4 months after they wrapped. They were expendable. The men who served came home to parades and private nightmares. Wayne came home to his ranch and his next picture, and the quiet understanding that his choice had consequences that would ripple through every war movie he'd ever make. Hold this moment in your mind, because when you watch They Were Expendable, you'll see what I'm about to tell you. The salute from that March afternoon made it into the final cut. If you watch the film, you can see it. Wayne's hand comes up just a fraction slower than Montgomery's. His eyes hold something Montgomery's don't awareness that he's performing a gesture he hasn't earned. Ford knew. Ford always knew. And he made sure the camera caught it, preserved it, turned Wayne's private shame into a permanent record. That's what made him a great director, and a cruel one. And maybe there's no separating those things when you're trying to capture truth on film. If you enjoyed spending this time here, I'd be grateful if you'd consider subscribing. A simple like also helps more than you'd think. Wayne kept making war movies, kept saluting on screen, kept wearing uniforms he'd never worn in real life. And every single time, somewhere in the back of his mind, he could hear Ford's voice cutting through the silence of that soundstage, asking a question that wasn't really a question, making a point that Wayne would spend the rest of his life trying to answer with his work. Can't you manage a salute that at least looks as though you've been in the service? No, he couldn't. But he showed up anyway, and maybe that was the only honest answer a man in his position could give. If you want to hear about the night Wayne got drunk after rap and told his stunt double the real reason he never enlisted, drop a comment below.